so far the ceasefire between Iran and Israel, fragile perhaps, it remains in place, allowing Middle East countries to breathe a sigh of relief. They've remained relatively quiet throughout the conflict. Of course, a big change, unlike decades before when they would weigh in on the tension between the two foes.
Well, all those days are gone now because much of that has to do with the fact that most of these nations have normalized ties with both Iran and Israel. Omira Al-Hussein is a research fellow and at the Al-Walid Center for the Study of Islam at the University of Edinburgh, and she explains the change in Arab and Gulf sentiment.
At the beginning, Gulf states have decided to sit this one out and watch how things unfold before they make any statements. And that has been the case, including with at the beginning of this conflict with the October 7 as well. So Gulf states hesitated to initially release statements immediately after the event, waiting it out to see how the initial kind of conflict will unfold. With Iran has represented for long a rival to the Gulf states. It has been a very destabilizing force in the Middle East, and seeing Iran's threat diminished by these attacks was not necessarily at the very beginning a cause of concern for Gulf states. So they decided to kind of hold off before releasing statements to condemn the attacks, which they eventually did.
Although, if we think about it, Iran's proxies, we're talking about Hezbollah, we're talking about Hamas, the Houthis even to a certain extent, they've operated and they've instigated in neighboring Arab and Gulf states as well. I wonder if the same governments must have been quietly cheering on the US military actions against Iran.
At the very beginning, they were. It felt like a sort of payback for all the destabilizing course that Iran has taken over the past two decades or more, really. But it did seem to them at one point that this was not an attack that would have any good consequences for them either. Undermining the Iranian regime at the moment would unleash a humanitarian crisis. But also it would elevate Israel as a hegemon in the region, which is something the Gulf states do not necessarily want to see happen.
Mira, we do know that Israel and President Trump had hinted at the possibility of regime change in Iran. I wonder how that would go down or how that would be received in neighboring Arab states, given that they are ruled by autocratic monarchs.
Well, to be honest with you, a destabilized Iran can have too many repercussions on the region. Not only are we talking about humanitarian crisis, refugees, but we're talking about the possibility of a pro-Western government taking over, or even a military government taking over in Iran, becoming even more dangerous for its neighbors. The Gulf states do want to see a stable Iran. It is for their it is something that will be good for the entire region to have a stable neighbor. They do consider Iran, as it is a contained neighbor at the moment. Iran has made a lot of concessions over the past few years, especially the post-access Iran has made a lot of concessions to better its relations with its Gulf neighbors. And this is the kind of Iran that the Gulf states have been working towards bettering their relations with. Seeing that Iran undermined at the moment does not benefit the Gulf states.
Well, Mira, with the Israel-Iran ceasefire in place, and currently both sides are observing the ceasefire, Arab nations are now turning their diplomatic attention to Gaza now, which they have said is the main cause of instability within the region. I wonder if there is a possibility of Arab nations who've normalized relations with Israel, whether they would be able to perhaps bring about an impasse between Israel and the Palestinian territories.
I'm not quite sure about that. I mean, the UAE has had its established relations with the state of Israel since 2020. It has had very little impact on how much it could have done to alleviate the suffering of the people in Gaza. Nothing much has been done beyond delivering aid to Gaza through the World Food Kitchen, which also the Israelis have kind of undermined with their bombing and killing this mission. So the UAE does not see very much leverage there through the Abraham Accords or normalization that it can sort of influence the outcome in Gaza.